My name is Sarah, and I thought I knew what betrayal felt like. But nothing prepared me for the moment I discovered my stepfather's plan to steal everything my mother left me. What he didn't know was that I had been recording everything for months. And that one video? It destroyed his entire scheme in ways he never saw coming. For 15 years, I called David Dad. He married my mother when I was just 8 years old, after my biological father passed away. Mom always told me how grateful she was that David loved me like his own daughter. We were a family. Or so I thought. When Mom was diagnosed with cancer 2 years ago, everything changed. David became distant, cold. He started making comments about blood family and how I should be grateful for everything he'd done for me. But Mom was fighting for her life, so I ignored the red flags. During her final months, Mom made sure her will was clear. The house, her savings, her jewelry, everything was to be split equally between David and me. She wanted to make sure I was taken care of, but she also wanted David to have security. She loved us both. 3 weeks after Mom's funeral, David called me into the living room. His face was stone cold as he slid papers across the coffee table. "Sarah, there's something you need to understand," he said, not even looking at me. "Your mother changed her will before she died. She left everything to me. You get nothing." I stared at the documents in shock. There it was, in black and white, a new will dated just days before Mom's death, leaving me completely out of the inheritance. But something felt wrong. Mom had been so weak those final days, barely able to speak, let alone make legal decisions. "This can't be right," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "Mom would never." She realized that blood is thicker than water, David interrupted. "I'm her husband. You were just extra baggage she picked up along the way." Those words shattered me. This man I had called Dad for 15 years was telling me I meant nothing to my own mother. But even through my heartbreak, something inside me refused to accept it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Mom's final days, how David had insisted on being alone with her when the lawyer came to visit, how he had sent me away to get some rest right before that supposed will change happened. I started digging. I called Mom's lawyer, but David had already been there, claiming to be the sole beneficiary. I contacted the hospital, but patient confidentiality laws blocked most information. Everyone kept telling me the same thing. The will is legal. You have no grounds to contest it. But I knew my mother. She had promised me, even in her final days, that she would make sure I was taken care of. Something was very, very wrong. 2 months into my investigation, I was cleaning out Mom's bedroom, the one room David hadn't touched yet. Hidden in her jewelry box, underneath a false bottom, I found something that made my blood run cold. It was a small digital recorder, the kind Mom used for her work notes. And on it was a recording from the day the lawyer supposedly visited to change her will. With shaking hands, I pressed play. Mom's weak voice filled the room. "David, I don't understand why you're asking me to sign this. Sarah is my daughter. I want her to have half of everything." Then David's voice, cold and calculating. "Margaret, you're not thinking clearly. The medication is making you confused. Sarah isn't really your daughter, she's not blood. Sign this and I'll make sure she's taken care of." "No, I won't sign this. Sarah deserves." "Sign it, Margaret. You're dying anyway." "What does it matter?" There was silence, then the sound of papers rustling and Mom crying softly. But that wasn't the end of the recording. What came next made my hands shake with rage. After Mom's signature, I heard David on the phone with someone else. Yeah, she signed it. The old bat didn't even read it properly. I told you those cancer drugs would make her compliant. No, Sarah doesn't suspect anything. She thinks her precious mommy loved her. By the time she figures out what happened, I'll have sold everything and disappeared. Then came the most chilling part. The best part? I got the lawyer to backdate everything. As far as anyone knows, Margaret was of sound mind when she made these changes. Perfect plan, right? My stepfather hadn't just manipulated a dying woman, he had committed fraud. He had conspired with a corrupt lawyer to forge documents and steal my inheritance. And he had been planning to disappear with everything my mother had worked her entire life to build. I knew I had to be smart about this. David was clearly dangerous and had already shown he would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. So I decided to play his game, but better. For the next month, I acted like the broken, defeated stepdaughter he expected me to be. I even thanked him for letting me stay in the house while I figured out my next steps. All while secretly making copies of every financial document I could find. But I also did something else. I started recording every conversation we had. I would casually bring up Mom's final days, acting confused and hurt. And David, thinking he had won, became careless. He started bragging about how easy it had been to convince Mom to sign the papers. How the lawyer was an old friend who owed him favors. Each conversation gave me more evidence. But I needed the ultimate confession. On what would have been Mom's birthday, I set up cameras throughout the house and told David I had accepted the situation and wanted to have one final conversation about Mom before I moved out. You know, David, I said, pouring him a glass of his favorite whiskey. I've been thinking about Mom's final days. It must have been so hard for you, watching her suffer like that. He relaxed, thinking I was finally surrendering. It was terrible, Sarah. But at least she was clear-headed enough to make the right legal decisions. Right decisions? Well, leaving everything to her husband instead of. He paused, looking at me with that cold smile, instead of some kid who wasn't even her real daughter. I kept pushing. I just wish I could have been there when she changed the will. It would have given me closure to hear her explain her reasoning. David laughed. Actually laughed. Oh, sweetheart, your mother didn't explain anything. She barely knew what she was signing. Those pain medications made her so confused, she would have signed anything I put in front of her. So she wasn't really thinking clearly? Clear? Sarah, your mother was practically unconscious half the time. I could have gotten her to sign adoption papers for a stray dog if I wanted to. He took another drink, clearly enjoying himself. The lawyer and I had to guide her hand just to get a legible signature. There it was. A full confession of fraud, recorded in 4K video with perfect audio. But David wasn't done. The alcohol had loosened his tongue completely. You want to know the truth, Sarah? Your mother did try to refuse at first. Kept mumbling about wanting you to inherit something. But I reminded her that you weren't really family, and that I was the one who had taken care of her all these years. Eventually, she got the message. He leaned forward, his eyes cruel. And even if she hadn't signed willingly, well, let's just say the lawyer was very creative with dates and signatures. Amazing what people will do for the right price. The next morning, I walked into David's real estate agent's office, where he was preparing to sell our family home. I set my laptop on the table and pressed play. David's face went white as his own voice filled the room, confessing to fraud, manipulation, and conspiracy. The real estate agent backed away like she'd seen a ghost. Sarah, what are you? I'm doing what Mom would have wanted, I said calmly. I'm making sure the truth comes out. But I wasn't done. I had spent weeks preparing for this moment. I handed David a thick envelope. These are copies of all the evidence I've gathered. The original recording Mom made, your confessions, financial records showing payments to the corrupt lawyer, and witness statements from hospital staff who remember you insisting on private meetings during Mom's weakest moments. His hands were shaking as he looked through the papers. One copy is with the police. Another is with the State Bar Association. Your lawyer friend is about to lose his license and face criminal charges. And the third copy? That's with a legitimate lawyer who has already filed papers to have Mom's real will restored. Within 6 months, David was facing multiple felony charges. The corrupt lawyer had already pleaded guilty and was cooperating with prosecutors in exchange for a reduced sentence. The forged will was thrown out, and Mom's original wishes were restored. But the story gets even better. Because David had already started selling off Mom's belongings and had drained her bank accounts, he was also charged with theft and money laundering. Every dollar he had stolen had to be paid back with interest and penalties. The house. It came back to me, along with everything else Mom had wanted me to have. But David lost more than just the money he tried to steal. His reputation was destroyed. His business collapsed. And he ended up in prison for 3 years. The day David was sentenced, I sat in that courtroom and thought about my mother. She had always taught me to stand up for what was right, even when it was difficult. She had also taught me that family isn't just about blood, it's about love, respect, and loyalty. David had forgotten those lessons. He thought that because I wasn't his biological daughter, I would be easy to manipulate and discard. He thought that grief would make me weak and helpless. He was wrong on every count. As I watched him being led away in handcuffs, I felt something I hadn't experienced since Mom died: peace. Not because I wanted revenge, but because justice had finally been served. Mom's wishes were respected, and her memory was honored. People often ask me how I found the strength to fight back against someone I had trusted for so long. The answer is simple. That first recording Mom made showed me that even in her weakest moment, she was still trying to protect me. She knew something was wrong, and she left me the tools to fight back. But it was the video of David's confession that really turned the tables. In his arrogance, he had handed me everything I needed to destroy his scheme. One video, with clear evidence of fraud and manipulation, unraveled years of planning and lies. This experience taught me that sometimes the people closest to us are capable of the deepest betrayals. But it also taught me that truth has a way of surfacing, even when it's buried under lies and legal documents. If you ever find yourself in a situation where someone is trying to take advantage of your grief or manipulate your trust, don't give up. Document everything. Ask questions. Trust your instincts. And remember that justice might take time, but it's worth fighting for. As a woman who lost her mother and was betrayed by her stepfather, I want other women to know that you don't have to accept being dismissed or discarded. You don't have to smile and accept crumbs when you deserve a seat at the table. David thought he could manipulate me because I was young, female, and grieving. He thought I would be too emotional and weak to fight back effectively. He learned the hard way that underestimating a woman who has been wronged is a dangerous mistake. Sometimes the greatest strength comes from the deepest pain. Mom's love gave me the courage to seek justice, and my own determination saw it through to the end. Today, I live in the house where I grew up, surrounded by Mom's things and her memory. And every day, I remember that she didn't just leave me an inheritance, she left me the example of how to fight for what's right, no matter how impossible the odds might seem. That one video didn't just turn the tables, it completely destroyed the man who thought he could steal my mother's love and legacy. And in the end, justice wasn't just served. It was served with a side of poetic justice that even Mom would have appreciated.